Okay, I hope I'm audible to all my students who are attending this particular lecture for CBSE Class 12 Economics course. In this particular lecture, I continue with the discussion of Indian economy. And in this particular lecture, we are going to start with a very important topic within the Indian economy course within economic planning from 1950 onwards. We look at features, problems, and policies in Indian agriculture. So remember our planning phase coming up of the 5-year plan started in 1951. Okay. So from that period onwards till 1991. So from 1951 to 1991, in this phase, we are looking at what were the features of Indian agriculture, what were the problems faced in Indian agriculture during this period, and what were the policies taken by the government in Indian agriculture from 1951 to 1991. So let's quickly start with this particular lecture. All students can see this lecture note on your screens. This is the topic we do within our lectures on Indian economics from 1951 to 1991. We look at features, problems, and policies in Indian agriculture. Okay, so first of all, let's understand what is the importance of agriculture in the Indian economy. Okay, so these are the points which highlight the importance of agriculture in the Indian economy. Point number one, contribution to GDP. We all know that agriculture sector majorly contributes to the GDP of the Indian economy. About 1/4 of India's GDP depends on the primary sector, of which agriculture is the core component. Remember, primary sector also has fishing, mining, animal husbandry, forestry, all that. But within the primary sector, agriculture is the core component, which contributes to the GDP of the Indian economy. For the estimation of national income, the share of agriculture and allied sector in GDP was reduced from 51% in 1950-51 to 18% in 2013 to 14. So the share of agriculture in GDP went down from 51% in 1950-51 to 18% in 2013 to 14. Reduced percentage contribution of agriculture does not imply reduction in the farm production. So when I say that the contribution of agriculture has gone down, it does not mean that the farm production. So only the farm production, it does not imply reduction in farm production. It only implies relatively greater growth of the non-farm production. So within the agricultural sector, the non-farm production has gone up. But the farm production is still the same. There is no significant change in the farm production. So I'm revising this point again. In the Indian economy, agricultural sector majorly contributes to the GDP. Okay. Within the primary sector, agricultural sector is the core component. Okay. And for national income estimation, if you look at the share of agriculture and allied sectors in GDP, it was reduced from 51% to 18%. This reduction did not mean that the farm production has gone down. It only implied that the non-farm production has grown. So other activities within the primary sector which have nothing to do with the farm production are all the non-farm production activities. So there has been a growth in the non-farm production activities, but that does not mean that the farm production activities have gone down. So it does not imply reduction in the farm production. It only implies greater growth of non-farm production. So I hope students have understood the first point. Let's look at the second point, employment. In India, agriculture is a significant source of employment. Over 50% of the working population in India is engaged in the agricultural sector, implying that agriculture is the principal source of subsistence for the people in India. We all have learned this in our lectures on Indian economy on the eve of independence also. Agricultural sector offers a significant source of employment in India. Okay, and the period I'm talking about is 1951 to 1991. That period. In that period, agricultural sector was offering a significant source of employment, which means that most of the people in India were dependent on agriculture for employment, for means of subsistence. Point number three, industrial raw material. Agriculture supplies industrial raw material in terms of cotton for the textile industry. So agricultural sector provides cotton for textile industry. It provides seeds for the oil industry. It provides sugar cane for the sugar industry and so on. That means the manufacturing sector itself depends on the agricultural sector for a lot of raw materials, for a lot of inputs. So here comes the next point. In fact, growth of the secondary or the industrial sector significantly depends on the growth of the primary or the agricultural sector. If the agricultural sector of the economy is not strong, the manufacturing or the industrial sector will also not be strong. So this highlights the importance of agriculture, because a well-developed agricultural sector is going to provide good raw materials for the secondary sector. Okay, contribution to international trade. Now, when I talk about exports and imports of India, India was majorly exporting agricultural products. So a lot of foreign exchange earnings earned by India were coming from the agricultural sector. So let's look at this point. Agriculture makes a significant contribution to the India's international trade. India exports tea, jute, cashew, nuts, tobacco, coffee, and spices. All of them are farm products. So thus the agricultural sector makes a substantial contribution to the foreign exchange reserves of the country. Foreign exchange reserves are what are maintained by the central bank, and it comprises of all the foreign currencies. That means India was a major exporter of agricultural products from 1951 onwards. It was exporting tea, jute, cashew, nuts, tobacco, coffee, spices. All of these are farm products. And major export earnings of India were earned from the agricultural sector. Okay. So point number 5, contribution to domestic trade. Okay. So agriculture also plays a significant role in the country's domestic trade. Okay, this is born out of the fact that huge expenditure in India is incurred on the purchase of farm products needed by more than 1 billion people in the country. So in India, the agricultural sector not only contributes to international trade, but agricultural sector in India also contributes to the domestic trade happening within the country. Okay, huge expenditure in India is incurred on purchase of farm products, because this is going to feed 1 billion people living in the country. Okay, so even within the country, a huge amount of expenditure is incurred on purchase of farm products. Okay, so point number 6, central to the transport industry. Now, agricultural sector also is very important for the transport industry, both for roads as well as railways. So agriculture plays the central role in the growth of the transport industry in India. Both the railways and roadways are the bulk carriers of farm products in India. So agriculture is a significant source of demand for the transport services. A well-developed agricultural sector will also lead to a well-developed transport sector. Because if the agricultural production in the economy is good, then automatically investments will be made on developing roads and railways, so that this agricultural output can be spread or distributed among different states in the economy. So agriculture sector also plays a key role in developing the transportation sector. Okay, so these are the 6 points which highlight what is the importance of agriculture in the Indian economy. It contributes significantly to the GDP of the economy. Although there has been no change in the farm products, but there has been a significant growth in non-farm production. Second point, agricultural sector offers a significant source of employment. Majority of the people in India see agriculture as a principal source of subsistence. Okay, third point, agricultural sector supplies industrial raw material for the manufacturing sector. Okay, so lot of raw materials like textile, seeds, and sugarcane are used ultimately by the secondary sector. Okay, fourth point, contribution to international trade. Agriculture significantly contributes to the export earnings of India. India is a major exporter of agricultural products, which in turn increases the foreign exchange reserves earned by the country. Not only agricultural sector contributes to international trade, it also contributes to domestic trade. Within the Indian domestic economy, there's a huge expenditure on purchasing farm products. Okay, and central to the transportation industry, a well-developed agricultural sector also creates an incentive or a motivation for developing the transportation sector, particularly the roads and the railways, which are bulk carriers of farm products in India. Okay, so hoping students have understood this. Let's look at the features of Indian agriculture. After having looked at the importance of agriculture in the Indian economy, now let's look at the features of Indian agriculture. So following are the important features of Indian agriculture. Point number one, low productivity. Something we saw during the Britishers' rule as well. Productivity means output per hectare of land. How much output is produced per hectare of land captures the productivity. So it is extremely low in India compared to the advanced nations in the world. Now, students can see this table. You don't need to learn this. No need to learn the values. No need to learn the values. Look at rice. The productivity in India, the year we are looking at is April 2011. So the year is April 2011. Okay. And if you look at rice in India, the productivity of rice is 3.2 tons of output per hectare of land. Compare it with the advanced economies like US. In US, it's almost more than double. In US, it's 7.5 tons of output per hectare of land. However, if you compare India with the world average, India still lies below the world average. The world average is 4.3 tons of output per hectare of land for rice. That means India exhibits a lower productivity in rice compared to the world average as well as to the advanced economies like US. Let's talk about wheat. Again, in India, the productivity of wheat is 2.8 tons per hectare of land. Compare it with US. In US, it's significantly, it's not very significantly higher. It's only 3.1%. It's only 3.1 tons per hectare of land in US. Although if you look at wheat, India is very close to the world average. The world average is 2.9 tons per hectare of land. So I can say that in wheat, India is very close to the world average and only marginally below a developed economy like US. But in rice, in case of rice, we can see a significant difference. India is below the world average and it's significantly below the US productivity for rice. This data is taken from the Economic Survey 2011-12 and the RBI Annual Report 2011-12. But students are requested not to like learn up. You don't need to learn up the figures. You only need to learn up the point till here. That's it. Okay. Then disguised unemployment, very important. Okay, disguised unemployment is a situation of hidden unemployment. It is found to be on a large scale in Indian agriculture because of the joint family system. Number of persons engaged on a piece of land. Please correct this. This is a typo here. This is piece, not price. Because of the joint family system, the number of persons engaged on a piece of land is much more than what is actually needed. That means disguised unemployment is hidden unemployment where more number of people are working on a given piece of land than what is required. And this happens because of the joint family system, especially in villages. If you look at households in villages, all of them are together working on a given piece of land. Now, suppose the land requires only 5 people, but 10 people are working on that land. That means the extra 5 people are not significantly contributing to increasing the agricultural output, but they are just present on the land. Their presence is not adding to the output. Okay, so apparently all are employed. When you look at them, all are working on that land, but in reality, some are unemployed. Even when some are withdrawn, total output will not fall. Now, if I quickly come to the whiteboard, students can recall that in microeconomics, we have done a concept of marginal productivity. Marginal productivity of labor, also called MPL, captures the additional output produced. It captures the additional output produced by hiring an additional unit of labor. By hiring an additional unit of labor. Now, when you talk about disguised unemployment, I can write that in case of disguised unemployment, the marginal productivity of labor is equal to 0, which means that adding additional labor on a given piece of land does not increase the output. When I say marginal productivity is 0, it means even if I add more labor to the agricultural land, it's not going to change the output. So disguised unemployment is when more number of people are working on that land than what is required. So the extra people who are working are not contributing significantly to producing any additional output. Okay, so if I come back to the lecture, so hoping students have understood this. Point number 3, dependence on rainfall. We have even done this in our lectures on eve of independence, agricultural Indian economy on the eve of independence. Agricultural sector in India is heavily dependent on the rainfall. Crop production, that is why the crop production is highly uncertain. If the year consists of good rainfall, good monsoon, it means that there is good crop production. A bad rainfall or a drought situation would mean that there is bad crop production. So this is one of the features of the Indian agricultural system. Okay, remember only permanent means of irrigation and water storage facilities can be a solution to this problem. Okay, if the water is not properly stored, or if it's not properly, if there is no permanent means of irrigation, then in that particular case, the only way in which agricultural sector can perform better would be in years when there is a good monsoon. Okay, so in India, agricultural sector heavily relies on the monsoon. Point number 4, in Indian agriculture, we have been using traditional inputs. Most farmers in India rely on traditional inputs like cow dung to be used as manure. Modern inputs like chemical fertilizers, insecticides, pesticides are not judicially used. Even chemical fertilizers, insecticides, and pesticides should be judicially used. You can't use them you can't use them in excess also. If you use fertilizers and pesticides in excess, it's going to kill your crop production. So farmers have to be well educated to what extent fertilizers, insecticides, and pesticides need to be used, because excess of that will also be bad, and not using it will also be bad. Okay, so this is owing to the poverty of the bulk of farming population in India. Remember, these fertilizers, insecticides, and pesticides are quite expensive, and farmers in India were poor. They had to take loans at very high rates of interest. So buying these fertilizers, pesticides, and insecticides was very costly. So as a result, Indian farmers, instead of using these modern inputs, which could have increased the productivity, the Indian farmers relied only on using traditional inputs like cow dung, which was used as manure. Okay. Point number 5, landlord-tenant conflict. Again, we have looked at this in the Indian economy on the eve of independence also. Huge areas are cultivated by the tenants who are not the owners or the owners of the soil. Remember, the tenants were only the tillers of the soil. The tenants were the people who were actually putting their blood and sweat, working hard on the soil. But they were not the owners of the soil. So obviously, bulk of the benefits of farming accrues to the owners, the landlords. Tenants often suffer deprivation, but they do not leave farming because of lack of avenues outside farming. The tenants had no option but to go back to the landlord, because other sectors like manufacturing and services sectors were not offering good employment opportunities in India at that time. Agriculture sector was the principal source of employment in India, as we have seen a few minutes back. So if the owners were exploiting the tenants, they had no option but to face this exploitation. They had nowhere else to go because there were no other sectors offering significant source of employment compared to the agricultural sector. And the landlords used to resort to unlimited exploitation of the tenants. We all know that. Bulk of the output which was produced by the tenants was taken away by the landlords, barely leaving anything for the tenants to consume. Okay. Point number 6, backward technology. Because bulk of the farms in India are small in size and the bulk of the farming population is poor, use of backward technology becomes the compulsory choice. Even the Britishers did not take initiatives in modernizing the technology, especially in the Indian agriculture. The farm size in India was also small. The farming population in India was poor, so no one had the funds to go for modern technology. So we find heavy reliance on cattle power and manpower. Use of modern equipments like tractors and thrashers is not a common practice because tractors and thrashers were expensive. And farmers did not have the money. They didn't have the funds to buy these expensive tractors and thrashers. So they only relied on cattle power and manpower. Okay. So these are the points which sum up the features of Indian agriculture. Low productivity in rice and wheat, where the productivity was much lower in rice compared to wheat when you compare India with the world average and with a developed economy like US. Disguised unemployment, more number of people working on a given piece of land in agriculture than what is required. Even if you remove some people out of this land, agricultural output will not change. Dependence on rainfall, agricultural sector heavily relies on rainfall. A good rainfall, a good monsoon would mean good crop production. A bad rainfall means a bad crop production. Farmers in India were using traditional inputs. They did not have the funds to go for modern technology like chemical fertilizers, insecticides, and pesticides. There was a landlord-tenant conflict where the landlords resorted to unlimited exploitation of the tenants, leaving lesser output to be consumed by the tenants. And the technology used in the agricultural sector was backward or outdated because neither the farm sizes were large nor the farmers had the funds to buy modern tractors and threshers. So they relied on cattle power and manpower. Okay, now in the next lecture, we are going to look at the problems faced by Indian agriculture. I'm going to start this topic in the next lecture. So I hope students have enjoyed this lecture. Any doubts, you can unmute your mic and ask, or you can get in touch with me for doubts on call or WhatsApp, or you can mail me your doubts at divineschoolof economics@gmail.com. This is where I stop in this lecture.